Hello. Hey, thanks for coming out, everybody who's here in the Commons on Wednesday night.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
This is the beginning of the third night of Service Quest 2016. If you came before, this may be redundant, but if you haven't been here before, the reason we're doing this is we wanted to find organizations that were doing things in line with what we felt Countryside's Christian outreach is or should be. And if there's organizations already doing that kind of work, creating Christ's example in our community, we thought creating opportunities to hear about that might spark opportunities and ideas within people from our congregation or people they know to help become part of that light that organization is, either with time or with money. And speaking of money, this organization, and I don't want to say much about the organization because they're going to talk about it, is one of the two groups that we're considering for the recipient of the special Easter offering. If you're not familiar, twice a year we give an unspecified amount that we raise from the congregation to give to an organization, and these folks are potentially one of those recipients. And so pay attention now for when we're doing the Easter offering next spring. If you're not familiar, when you go along 480 right before downtown, there's been quite a revival, and these folks are definitely participating in that. So before they even tell us what they're doing, let's give them a hand for helping that part of the city in general.
All right, thank you very much. It's so great to be back here. It's been a couple years. You guys have played an instrumental role in our organization up to this point, and I'll touch base on that in a little bit. But my name is Christian Gray. I'm the director of InCommon. Rachel will introduce herself in a little bit. But we're excited to share our overall mission with you at InCommon. You guys all familiar with kind of a Prezi format? So this is where we're headed tonight. It's pretty straightforward, but please at any time, it doesn't have to follow this specific line of logic. If you want to jump in and ask some questions and dialogue, please pause me. Or if I'm standing in the way, because I forget that I'm talking in front of a device, please let me know and I'll get out of your way. But what we'd love to share with you is our mission at InCommon, what we do, the places that we work, our strategy for doing that, and our initiatives and different ways that we can partner. So for our mission at InCommon is to alleviate poverty at a root level by uniting and strengthening vulnerable neighborhoods. There's two main key ideas in this mission statement. The first is alleviating poverty at the root level. Our organization's 15 years old, and we've experimented with a lot of different ways to counteract poverty, but we've really wanted to figure out how do we get at the roots? How do we stop it before it even starts, which has led us into the neighborhoods. We find out from literature and just from best practices that if we can stop poverty in neighborhoods, we can stop it for future generations, because that old idiom is really true. We're products of our environment. And we see this from the research of zip codes. Have you heard this? That zip codes are a predeterminant of our future outcome. So really our organization does really one simple thing, is to change zip codes that future generations have the opportunities that many of us had when we grew up. Safe streets, good parks, good schools, good housing. We want that type of environment for people to grow up in. We don't have the audio tonight, but please visit our website if you can. It's InCommon CD, as in communitydevelopment.org. We have a fun little informational video, animated video on our organization and our mission. In terms of neighborhoods, we we're practitioners of community development, and we get to consult and coach community development. So the way that we're able to spread ourselves broadly beyond just the neighborhood we're in is by teaching others how to do it. So in terms of doing it in practice, we focus largely in the Park Avenue neighborhood that was just mentioned. Are we all familiar kind of where Park Avenue is? Park Avenue is a collection of Fort Burnside neighborhood and Leavenworth neighborhood associations. And it's one of the most fantastic neighborhoods, I think, in Omaha. It's one of the most diverse and one of the most vibrant neighborhoods. A lot's happening in Park Avenue. A lot of changes are happening and underway. It's one of the most historic areas of our community. Obviously, President Ford was born in the neighborhood. Legend has it that Marlon Brando was born in the neighborhood. So a lot of great, rich history. In fact, outside of our community center that I'll talk about in a little bit, I was reminded last night that There was a shooting back in the 1930s that stopped the whole Tom Dennison city boss movement. People had such an uprising of what happened at that particular shooting that it changed the trajectory of the city. So we're right at the crux of that. Park Avenue also has some significant challenges. 1 in 3 residents lives in poverty, and nearly 1 in every 2 kids lives in poverty. So that's why we're there. That's why we chose the neighborhood that we're in. We want to affect that change. It's also a highly transitional neighborhood. About 77% of residents are renters. So we see a lot of turnover, which makes our work really important to build some sense of community and some integration in the neighborhood. Has anybody actually lived in this area? One of you back there? Yeah, I usually when I'm in a group, a small group even, there's usually at least a couple people that have spent some of their history in the neighborhood. So we also get to coach it, which is one of the fun things we get to do because we love what we do and we really believe in what we do, and so extending that to other neighborhoods is really important to us. We coach it in a couple areas over in the Walnut Hill neighborhood right now, which is a similar neighborhood to Park Avenue, and right now we're also conversing with a group in Lincoln to do some similar work in the Clinton neighborhood. So in terms of our strategy, this is kind of the 20,000 foot overview of what we do, and we'll start right to left. We empower change. So one of the really unique things about what we do is not just that we want to see a stronger neighborhood, which is really important, but it's the process for how we get there. We really want to see the neighbors themselves, the residents of this community, being the people who come together and make it a better neighborhood, which is called asset-based community development. We'll talk about that in a minute. So these cute little guys, they're not professional staff or even volunteers. These are the neighbors themselves. So us as an organization working with volunteers, we want to see that happen through integrating ourselves into their lives. And the way that we get there, this is built on best practices, is we build social capital, which is a fancy word for building relationships. We do that through block parties. We have a community center. We do a lot of cultural events. It's a very diverse neighborhood, as I mentioned. And then in terms of equipping and supporting people, we have a plethora of different things that happen, from adult education to job training to affordable housing to health and wellness opportunities. So we're making sure that not only are people connected in our neighborhood, and not only do they have individual skills and capacities to succeed, but we're bringing those together so that they become the change agents in the Park Avenue neighborhood. In the methodology, the best practice we use is called asset-based community development, ASSET. The acronym is ABCD. ABCD, yes. And it's a unique way of approaching a community. Traditional community development takes an approach of looking at the problems in the neighborhood and says, these are the things that need fixing, and who do we find that's outside of this area? Who are the professionals that can come in and fix our problems? ABCD says, no, let's identify the gifts in this neighborhood. Let's identify the residents who have particular skills and capacities that we can then organize together towards community change so that the neighbors themselves are creating the change. So in summary, ABCD is developing and empowering local leadership. In the end, we want a strong neighborhood, but the process that we get there is through seeing the neighbors rise up and do this themselves. We love to do that. This is an ancient Chinese proverb that I love that really articulates what asset-based community development is and what InCommon is about. Go to the people, live among them, learn from them, love them, start with what they know, build on what they have. The best leaders, when their task is done, the people will say, we have done it ourselves. So that's what it should look like, and that's what we're aiming to, is that we're facilitating some of this stuff happening in the community, but in the end, the neighbors would step back and say, we did that ourselves. So our initiatives, what practically do we do? This comes out of, do you recognize these little figures from that previous slide we showed? So this was empowering change, the one we started with, and these are building human capital and social capital. So we're just gonna go down these lines and show what are the specific things that InCommon's doing, and maybe you can start to connect the dots on how you or Countryside would like to be involved hands-on. So one of the major things that we do to build community in the neighborhood is through a community center. We opened up the Park Ave Commons, a community resource center, in 2012, and this was by and large a partnership with Countryside Church at the time. We got the Christmas gift, I think it was in 2012, which allowed us to be able to build out this beautiful community center. And the community center does a lot of the things that we talked about in terms of the empowering and the equipping, but in terms of the social piece, people can come right in this open garage door anytime they want. They can use the computers. We have a little library. We have Wi-Fi, some tables. A lunch truck comes by every day, and people have lunch in the community. We just want people to come together, get to know each other, have a safe place to be. And this is what it looked like before you got involved. It was just an empty store that we got to revitalize. That's one of the fun outcomes of doing community involvement, is not only do you get to make a social impact, but you also can physically improve the community as well. These are a couple images from block parties. So another way that we build community is doing good old-fashioned block parties. I love these images in particular because they start to show the representation and the diversity of our community. We'd love to celebrate that and bring people together through all different cultural means and ways. And similarly, we do a lot of cultural, specific, targeted cultural outreach. This is the Day of the Kids, annual Latino festival. So we just brought in kids, knocked down a piñata, and had some fun that day. This is just a community meeting. We get to host meetings in our space, and it gives you a little bit more of a visual of our community center. So it's broken up into 3 parts. One is this community space that I just mentioned, the garage doors there, and people can come in and use it anytime they like. Right behind these folks is our classroom, and then we have an office in the space. But it's just a great resource in the community. Thanks to you guys, people can come in and have public meetings like this. This one was specific on a bike lane off of 32nd Avenue. And then recently, another way that we're building community and also empowering some leaders is through youth outreach. We just launched a brand new youth program, and this is a way that I'm sure we could use a lot of help. But this was our first event. It just occurred just a couple months ago. We saw 50 youth come in for a video game night. So it's just a great way to get kids engaged. They'll be the future leaders of our neighborhood, of course, by the way. So is how do we build the relationships in the neighborhood? And this is how do we build the capacity of people? How do we help people to succeed? And this is really one of our strong suits at InCommon in the Park Ave Commons Resource Center. We do a lot of adult education at the Resource Center. We do GED in English, GED in Spanish. We do ESL. This is a picture of our ESL class, I think it was last year. So we're really wanting to see adult education and people be able to provide for their families and succeed through these classes. Additionally, another way that we see people succeed is through our jobs program. We really love talking about this because it's such a creative way to get people back to work. It's a robust program that includes soft skill development. It includes coaching and mentoring, which we'll talk about more in a second, and resume building, but it also offers people tangible work experience. So people who might have difficulty getting back into the work field because of past history or whatever it might be, we put them to work recycling in the community. We have contracts with downtown and midtown businesses, so we collect income from that, and we're able to redirect that back to people who are getting back into the workforce, which is really exciting for us. So if you know businesses who want to hire people to do the recycling, let us know. We do coaching as well. So we call it Common Life, both for our employees in our recycling program as well as people going through our other programs. We have found that one of the most needed things that people transitioning out of poverty need is just people walking alongside them, cheerleading them, encouraging them to move forward. So we call it Common Life. We're always in desperate need of people to play that particular role, and Rich will talk about more of those specifically in a minute. And then just this past November, we got into the apartment game. The reason that we did that is because there's so much development happening in Park Avenue that we wanted to make sure that there was still affordable places for people to remain in the community. So these are the Bristol apartments. There's 64 units of affordable housing that we purchased last November to preserve affordable housing. And we're moving into a new exciting project, the Georgia Apartments, which is just directly behind the Bristol Apartments. We hope, we're in the process of trying to acquire this property, family affordable housing, so that not only are we meeting the needs of single adults and small families, but also larger families as well. And this is a great picture. It shows the success that's happening through our adult education program. So you see a group of people who are moving on from their GED degree. This was our Spanish language GED class. And one of the great things about this picture is the gentleman in the green shirt works with us. His name is Arturo, and he's a resident leader. The way we identified Arturo was doing what we called the listening project. So we went out in the community, got to know people, and identified Arturo. And through the process, he is now a staff with us. So he leads our Hispanic outreach programs at InCommon. So that's been a great thrill and success for us. And then finally, empowering change. How do we see that happen at InCommon? Well, a few ways we've seen that sort of come to life. In addition to what I just mentioned with Arturo, when we first started working in the Park Avenue area, it was about 7, 8, 9 years ago now, and we started what's called asset mapping. That's one of the basic practices of asset-based community development. We identified what are the strengths in the community. We identified that there's a lot of churches in the Park Avenue neighborhood. We have all the firsts, so First Presbyterian, First Baptist, First Unitarian. We brought them all together, and a lot of these churches have never met, or at least hadn't met in any recent history, and said, what are your hopes and dreams for this neighborhood? What are your challenges? How can we all work together to accomplish something good? And they said, we would love to do a community meal. We'd love to bring in people into our food hall and just provide a meal. And that's been going on for the past 6 or so years, serving about 150 meals each week. It became its own nonprofit organization called Neighbors United. So that's just an example of spurring on new enterprises in the neighborhood, resident leadership. Additionally, we've seen people take ownership of programs. So this is a picture of one of our recent block parties. It's a really fun picture. You can see sort of the layers of things that we're doing. In the forefront, kids doing an art project. In the background, you see a skate ramp and a mural that we got to do with local artist Waddy White last year. It's a really cool 10-story mural on one of the public housing towers. In the middle, on the middle here, though, you see a Zumba class, and the gal in red, her name's Annabelle. And her and her sister were in our GED program, and they said, hey, you know what would be great in this community center is if we had a Zumba class. So we said, here's the keys, go for it. It's been one of our most successful programs. It's kind of transitioning right now, looking for new leadership. But for the last 2 or so years, Annabelle's been leading that completely as a volunteer and a community resident, taking ownership. So before I transition it to Rachel so she can talk more specifically about ways to get involved in InCommon, Carla mentioned this is your current theme, who do you say that I am? And I was thinking about that, how that connects to InCommon. And the picture that came to mind was that passage where John the Baptist sends out his disciples to Jesus and says, are you the one that we're expecting, or should we be looking for someone else? And it's a fascinating idea, right? Because they're trying to identify, is this the Messiah? And I love Jesus' answer to the question, excuse me, because he could have authenticated himself in any way. He could have been bold about it and said it in so many different ways, but the way that Jesus authenticated himself was he said, look, the blind are seeing, the lame are walking, the lepers are now healed and cleaned. And he's authenticating who he is by the way, tangible ways that people on the margins, on the edges, are experiencing new life. And so today, as I connect back to the type of work that we get to share together, I think about, when people are looking for employment now, are able to provide for their families, or might be displaced from a neighborhood because they're outpriced because of rising real estate costs, or even as parents are getting their GED degree and showing their kids that they're able to succeed and become better human beings. I think we continue to authenticate who he is, and that's where we'd love to continue to call you guys into the work that we're doing to continue to authenticate who Jesus is and how he cares about people in need in our community. So with that, I will call up Rachel to finish us off.
All right, my name is Rachel. I'm the partnership director at InCommon. So I am going to talk to you about different ways that you can potentially partner with us in all the initiatives that Christian was sharing. InCommon has a pretty small staff, so we are so thankful for just all the partners in our community, from individual volunteers to churches and the great community organizations that we get to work with. So I'm excited to share about some of those opportunities with you. For volunteering specifically, all the programs that Christian talked about, the ESL program, the new youth programs, even in our apartment complexes, we have huge needs for volunteers right now. So that ranges from as an individual coming down once a week and teaching English or working with our youth, or potentially as a small group or a family coming down on a Saturday and helping with some small maintenance projects or painting at the Bristol. So any type of volunteering that you can really think of, we would love to visit with you about that. We do have a handout today with some of our current opportunities, but in addition, there's lots of other ways that we've had volunteers get involved. If you are skilled in technology or art or really anything that you're interested in, there's been some great partnerships developed just by people coming to us and offering the skill and time that they have. So I would love to visit with you about that, and make sure you grab one of our volunteer opportunity handouts on your way out. I do want to touch on 2 other potential partnerships. Christian talked about the Common Good, which is our workforce development program. And as he mentioned, we partner with downtown and midtown businesses to provide recycling services, as well as some of that on-the-job work experience. So if you work for a business or own a business in that area, I know Leslie, our program director, would be excited to connect with you. And this is really where that Common Life piece also plays really well with the Common Good program, and it has been a really great fit for our church partners. Common Life, that companionship program, is done really well in the context of a small group or a small community. So if you have life groups or things like that, it can be a really great match to build that relationship and provide that support and community there. So that would be a great way for you as a church to consider connecting through the Common Life program. Finally, that financial investment, as Christian mentioned, we were a recipient of one of your offerings several years ago that had a huge impact on the neighborhood, and we're so thankful for the generosity of so many in our community who partner with us in that work, including you. So that's always an opportunity as well. At this point, I think if anyone has any questions, we'd love to visit with you further about maybe anything that you saw or were wondering about with InCommon.
Could you maybe give us an example of how that Common Life thing works? Just how the
Yeah. Want to pass these around?
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the picture that was on the screen is Mitch and Terrell. Terrell was involved in our Common Good program, so he was gaining on-the-job work experience. He was employed through our recycling program and also receiving some of that help with the soft skill development and those types of things. And then he was matched with Mitch, who is a part of City Light Church, and so he has that community there. So Mitch and Terrell meet once a week, just for 45 minutes or so. They just talk, catch up on life, and it's really it's a friendship. And so you hear both of them, both Mitch and Terrell, talk about how much they've gotten out of the relationship and the things that they've learned from each other. And so Terrell is actually graduated from Common Good, the program, and but he continues to meet with Mitch, so that relationship has continued, providing support for both of them.
I know there's a lot of parts of the Park Avenue area that are high income housing now.
Yeah.
How involved are people from those areas in any of this?
Yeah. Do you want to answer that?
Sure. What was the question?
There are a lot of higher income areas in Park Avenue now. How involved are those people?
We haven't been able to involve those people to a high degree at this point. We're still trying to figure out that relationship. And this is a brand new thing for us. I think those apartments started developing about 3 years ago, which completely changed the neighborhood. I can't remember if I mentioned, but just 4 years ago, we had a gentleman's club in the neighborhood called Sherry's Show Club. All those properties on Park Avenue, Leavenworth, were dilapidated. There was a lot of crime and issues around them. So I think the neighborhood's still trying to figure out what's its identity and how people from such diverse backgrounds get along with each other. We've been experimenting with how can we use a community center to bridge that gap. Up to this point, we've really just seen people that might be from more of an impoverished background utilize the center. We're trying to figure out how do we integrate people from those other parts of our neighborhood to come and enjoy it. And back to Rachel's comments on common life, that's really this bridging relationship that we're looking to see happen. So if we can get actual people in the neighborhood beginning to share life together, that'd be a win. We haven't cracked that nut yet. Yes?
To add on to that question, as Urban Village, the developer, we've been able to talk to them and adding a community center onto some of those condos or some of those apartments, or helping get some of their residents or host block parties in front of their buildings or anything like that.
Yeah, we have a pretty good relationship with our Urban Village, and they were really excited about the Bristol apartments that we purchased because I think they see some value in keeping a diversity in the neighborhood. But yeah, they haven't really mentioned much in terms of the way of desire of figuring out how to connect their tenants socially to the neighborhood. Yeah, that hasn't been part of the conversation. We would love to figure that out with them now. Yes, ma'am.
I love the asset-based community development model. I think that's incredibly important. And I'll try not to make my question too long, but if you need background information, then just ask. Have you done anything in the neighborhood in terms of helping people connect with each other in time banking? I understand that earning time in a time bank doesn't pay your rent, but it does help connect people to each other so that they see what assets they have to offer one another. And I'm curious about that type of community building.
Yeah, that's a great question. Are you all familiar with this idea of time banking, where you do something for someone based on your skill set, and it's 1 hour equals 1 hour. So if I was to put an hour into repairing your car, then maybe you give me an hour in babysitting, and we'd be square. We haven't done too much of that, but what I'm excited about is we do something I mentioned called the Listening Project, and recently we added some technology to the Listening Project through a platform called Typeform. So one of the other ways that you can volunteer with us is we could take you through the Listening Project training. You could go out with a partner in the community and do some interviewing with residents that allows you to use a cell phone or a tablet and put in people's responses, and then we have it then banked automatically. So as people begin to identify, we start out the Listening Project with questions like, what are you good at? What are you good at enough to teach others? What skills do you have? What gifts do you have? It's very asset-based in its approach. As people answer those questions, then they automatically are pulled into that category. As well as recently, we've modified our program registration forms. They also have those same questions, which then also get banked as well. So it's a very great question. We really love to figure out how to do that more and more.
So I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Obviously, you guys are doing a lot of stuff. There's a lot of volunteer, and you can answer that. Your answer is confidential, but I'm just curious.
I thought you said this was being taped.
Curious, is it all volunteer, or is it necessary to have paid positions? And then as a follow-up question, is the organization carrying debt, and to what degree can you share that?
Good questions. We are a staff of 7. We just added a couple people. I have to keep asking Rachel. That's good, we're growing, so I have to ask how many people we have. Not all of them are full-time. We have a couple part-timers in there. But yes, it does take staff to get this thing going. Our annual budget without the apartment complex is about $400,000 a year. So we're a pretty lean organization, get a lot done with a little. And then your question was about debt. The only debt we have is on the properties that we own. So the Bristol apartments cost us $1.5 million, and we hold that in a note. One of the things that we're really excited about, though, with the property is, I don't know if you're all familiar with historic tax credits and low-income housing tax credits, but we're able to leverage available tax credits to convert this $1.5 million project into what will probably be about an $8 million asset for the neighborhood based solely on those tax credits. So it's going to be a diamond in that community. And the great thing in terms of Urban Village, it's going to be as nice and as swanky as an Urban Village apartment, but intended for low-income people, about the 40% to 60% AMI. Yeah.
Where does that 400,000 come from? Is it just charitable giving?
Yes, the question was where do we get that 400,000 for our operating? We largely are supported about 60-70% supported through gifts. So people who write monthly donations, we kind of do the NPR thing. That's kind of how we are supported. We do very well, just sort of as a example, do very well with the Omaha Gives campaign. In fact, I think we are number 7th or 6th in the community last year for the number of unique donors. Of all 600 participating organizations, we have a very strong grassroots base. There's a couple philanthropic organizations that we partner with. So the William and Ruth Scott Family Foundation is an annual contributor to our campaign, and the Hitchcock Foundation joined us this year. So there's a few foundations that are part of that, but by and large, it's folks like you and I writing that $25, $50 check a month. Yes?
If there's no other questions, I have another one.
Yes.
I realize it might take some thought, or, there might be multiple answers, but if you were to try to answer the question of, where's the biggest hole in terms of people power, or what is the talent that you would benefit from the most, so that when we're in conversations, we can say, oh, hey, they said they really need this kind of talent, or they really need this kind of volunteer work. Is there one that stands out? Like, is there something where you're like, man, I wish we had more of these things going on, or more of this type of person helping?
I'll start out, and then Rachel, if you have anything to add to that. That Common Life program, where people are just connected in that relationship, is a huge uphill climb for us, and it always has been. We've had this program for years, but it's asking a lot of people, right, to get introduced to someone you don't know in a different life circumstance, and begin just walking alongside them and with all the unknowns that's involved. So it's a huge thing that we never get enough people for, but a lot of the other things that we do, tutoring and, those give you connections to people that just hopefully spur some of those relationships. So I'd say the biggest need, the biggest sort of hurdle is finding those companions or mentors in people's lives. We've also found that because some of our programs aren't distributive, we don't give out a lot of stuff. It's more relational. It's also challenging too. So overall, we're a difficult organization, I think, to fill with volunteers, because it's not a tangible thing. It's that relational, walking alongside people, or at least tutoring in a skill. So people who are willing to look into that and to give themselves to that is always a great thing. And that's why we love partnering with churches, because they're willing to rethink how we do charity and offer ourselves to people. And churches are great social capital enterprise where they're willing to give themselves in that relational way. Anything you'd add to that?
No, deep relationship.
Yeah, deep relationship. But we've been trying, knowing that that's sometimes a hard hole to fill. That's why we're excited about things like the Bristol Apartments, where we can get groups in to come paint a hallway, just to sort of break the ice and get to know us a little bit, bump into some of our residents, maybe even start a relationship in a casual way like that. So we realize that creating those on-ramps is really important.
Maybe some administrative work behind the scenes, even, being in the community center to help out with some of our administrative stuff going on there will, again, allow for some opportunity to meet residents, but also maybe not jump into this deep relational commitment right away. So we could always use help there as well.
Yes?
Given how long you've been in the community, have you been able to track whether or not the amount of turnover has slowed? People are putting down those roots that you're looking for?
We don't have it in data, but just more observationally, I think it's increased. And I think a lot of that is because of some of the turnover of apartments happening in the neighborhood. The way that I observed development or redevelopment happening in the neighborhood was a lot of the vacant buildings first got used up and repurposed, which was really fantastic. And then developers started seeing that there was some opportunities there and began to reuse occupied buildings that were largely occupied by lower income residents. And now that we're seeing a lot of demolitions too, so clearing out new places to build new properties. So I would estimate that it's greater than the 77%, or the renter occupancy is probably even heightened, and the turnover rate has even heightened since we moved into the neighborhood.
So do you know where those people go?
No, unfortunately, unless we know them personally, which does happen on occasion, there's no tracking system currently available to track displacement. So unless it's a federally owned or funded property, there's nothing that puts in statistics on where people are going and how many people are being moved out. So we're working with UNO, or I think it's actually UNL, a grad student over there right now who's going to take an inventory, a housing stock inventory of what we currently have. One of the good pieces of information we do have, it might be getting in the weeds, is in 2008, the Chamber of Commerce did a redevelopment study for Park Avenue, which took a housing stock survey. So we're going to try to compare that 2008 information with what's current to see how much transition has happened. But it's hard to tell sometimes with the apartment buildings. We have a lot of conversions in Park Avenue. So what were previously single-family residences have been chopped up and made multifamily units. So it's really difficult to even know sometimes which ones those are and how many people are living in those buildings. So it's very difficult to track unless we know people personally. Good question.
When did it begin? When was the founding of the organization?
2003. Yes.
Earlier at the beginning, you talked about a couple of other similar projects. Did I hear that right? Something in Lincoln, and then is there another kind of project you have going on other than in that neighborhood?
Yes, so we have found opportunities to partner with other organizations and churches who are in urban areas and who are awakening to like, wow, we found ourselves accidentally oftentimes in this neighborhood of need and we're not exactly sure how to go about facilitating change. So we've had the opportunity to coach them and do some consulting work and say, here's what we would do. If we could reverse time, because we're 15 years old and we made so many mistakes, we still do, but we're trying to save them some of the challenges that we faced because really at the core of what we do, again, is leadership development. And we're working with organizations and churches who are kind of our knee-jerk reactions to set up new services and to treat the community as if it needs some care from us as opposed to looking at the community and saying you have something to offer and you can take care of your own needs, you just need maybe some coaching and some help. So we're basically working with them saying don't do anything before you set the first impression that you're distributing any type of goods, which sometimes is necessary. Let's set the impression that we want to hear from you. Let's set the impression that we want to know what's already happening, what the good is already happening in this community, and who the leaders are, and how we can get behind you. So it involves what we call the listening project I mentioned, asset mapping. So we get to pass on some of those toolboxes or tools from that toolbox to them. That it? You guys were great. Thank you so much for having us. We love Countryside. We love Pastor Eric and our relationship there. And you guys are always so great to us. Rachel and myself, we passed out the handout. So that has a list of different volunteer opportunities. We do volunteer orientations every few weeks. So if you're interested in getting deeper into it and figuring out more specifically how you might be involved, that's a great way to do it. We also do sort of more advanced trainings for the listening project and asset mapping and asset-based community development. I'll be leading a workshop this week at the In the Neighborhood conference. So if you want to learn about asset-based community development, that's a great way to do it too. But don't hesitate to reach out. I think you all have my card/magnet. Put that up on your fridge and remember us. So thanks for your time tonight.